Hey everyone, welcome to the Tom's Hardware Podcast for today, May 23rd, 2023. As always, I'm Tom's Hardware Editor-in-Chief, Abram Pilch. I'm joined by Associate Editor Les Pounder, Raspberry Pi expert Ash Hill, and our very special guest, Eric Mackrodt, who's here to talk about his amazing new project, which takes us back in time to 486. So, Eric, before we talk about your project, what can you tell everyone about yourself? You run an amazing website called the Eric Experiment, called ericexperiment.com. What do you do there?
Well, my website's mostly about retro computing and retro gaming, and some tangentially related subjects, like cool projects related to electronics, mostly retro, that I want to talk about. I don't have anything very specific. It's just things that I find cool, and that goes for my YouTube channel. I don't post very frequently. I don't update them very frequently, but yeah, when I have time between my day job and stuff, I work on projects that I will eventually put there. The Tiny 46 being one of them. Yeah.
Wow, awesome. So, tell everyone about your Tiny 46 and what it does.
Yeah. So I guess I'll go a little bit with a bit of history. I wanted to one of the things that I wanted to do in the beginning was one of the ideas that I had and that I still have. I still want to do this is build a smaller size computer that ideally with modern parts that would work but it's still with the same look and feel of a retro computer, because the reality is, like, I have computers here from the 90s and stuff, and those computers are starting to fail, and the reality of the world, those things are not going to last forever. And eventually we're gonna be with just piles of e-waste that don't do anything anymore. So what I want to do, because I really love the history of computing, and especially because I grew up in the 90s, I love that era of computing. I wanted to build something that would run the operating systems from that time, and we would be able to replace to replace parts very easily and find new parts, so those machines could work for a long time. The problem is, not the problem, sorry. And one of the things that I thought about doing was using a Raspberry Pi initially, because it's easy to find, and it's easy to set up emulators and stuff.
Right.
And I also thought about using the Mister project with the Terra 6 DE10 Nano, the FPGA board. I thought about using PC 104, and one of the most promising ones, I thought about using the 86 Duino with the Vortex 86 processor. Mm-hmm. And the good thing about using those things, the 86 Duino especially, is that the hardware is basically a 386 but with around 300 megahertz. So it's a faster 386 that would be able to run Windows 98 pretty well, Windows 95, and my favorite, Windows 3.1. But the problem is, I wanted to have the look and feel like we see a lot of projects like this with emulators or with this types of hardware on YouTube, and they work pretty well, but they require a lot of extra things to get them going. Like with the Raspberry Pi, you need to do a lot of stuff in software to be able to get them going, and a lot of the times you can't really do make it boot directly into the operating system. And when you shut down the retro operating system, it shut down the computer as well. You probably go back to the command prompt, like to bash or something like that on Linux.
Right.
And I'm really about the look and feel. Like, I want it to be with modern hardware, but also I want it to behave like an old computer, like a retro computer, because it's just to be as authentic as possible. So that was what I wanted to do originally, and I have a friend on YouTube. He's not doing videos anymore, but Scanlines. I don't know if you guys seen his channel. He builds a little computer with a 486 SBC. For people who don't know, SBC stands for a single board computer. A Raspberry Pi technically would classify as that. But when we talk about industrial applications, it would be those boards with an ISA connector in it that plugs into a backplane, which is just a board with a few ISA slots that you can connect other boards to it. Yeah. Those things are designed for industrial applications. And I saw him build one with 3 slots. So it was like a little tiny block of a computer like this big. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool because I can actually use real hardware in it, like with a real 486 and stuff. So my modernity of hardware for longevity angle to it went through the garbage. I was like, okay, I guess if this thing breaks, it's going to be hard to find parts. But at the same time, I was like, man, I could really build a tiny and cool, like, small computer that could go anywhere and that I could use for testing software and stuff like that I could set up anywhere. And that's what I went with. I decided, you know what? I'm going to use that. I'm going to build a tiny computer. And instead of a hard drive, I'm going to use the SD card to IDE adapter instead, because then I can replace the hard drive very easily. That exactly one that I used. Yeah. And I went with a Gotek floppy drive, the emulator, because I can use a flash drive to instead of floppy disks. But otherwise, it's mostly original 46 hardware. And the good thing is that I thought, well, one day if I lose everything and I don't have any space anymore, at least I have a little computer that can fit in a studio apartment, and I don't have to give up my hobby completely. Nice. Yeah, but that's nice. Pretty much the story of how I got to the point that I got.
Yeah. Can we show the viewers what you've built this computer so we can get a good look at it? Because it's remarkable. It's not just about the internals. It's also you've designed the outside of it to be faithful to the era.
That's what I said. I wanted it to look and feel as much as possible like the real thing. So I designed the whole computer. It's all modular. I use screws for everything, so you can disassemble it and replace parts if you want to.
That's perfect.
This is the first computer I've ever had with a functioning key lock.
Yeah, I can remember those in the day.
Yeah, I had those on my computer, and I never quite understood. I mean, I guess the idea is if somebody breaks into your house, they still can't use the computer because they need the key.
Yeah, and it's the easiest thing in the world to bypass if you're a burglar. I guess it's more for, like, if you're in a business or something, you lock the computer if you go to lunch, so people don't really so they can use the keyboard. It's the window lock of the time before you had passwords on Windows. So it's the first computer I have with a functioning key lock. And I got these things from like the switch to replicate some computers in this era had power switches like this one.
Yep.
This is the disk display from the Gotek floppy disk emulator that I routed down here. So it's not the megahertz display, but it looks like it. And this is the standard. These are the standard LEDs for the hard drive and power, the reset button. All this is functional. This tiny floppy drive. There are 2 buttons. They control which they control the Gotek as well, so you can select which floppy disk you want to use, which floppy disk image specifically. And this is the part that I'm most proud of, which is this little door up here that you can open.
Yes, that's good.
Oh, there's a USB slot under that.
Yeah, this is the Gotek USB connector that you can put the USB drive with the floppy images, and it's going to work like a normal floppy drive. And then here's the SD card.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So you can't use an actual floppy in these?
No, you have to use the flash drive with the images, and then you plug it here, and then you can flip through the images using these two buttons here. And then you're going to know which one you are looking at this display.
Does the floppy drive light up when you are accessing
it? Does. Yeah, it works just like just like a normal floppy drive. So I connected these two LEDs to the GoTech, and then they light up just as they would in a normal computer with a normal floppy disk drive. The only problem that I had that I didn't anticipate when I was building it is that connecting two LEDs to the GoTech to do that is too much power. That they need too much power, much more than the GoTech can provide. So the LEDs are a bit dim at the moment. Eventually, I'm going to build a little board with a transistor or something like that. I had many suggestions on my YouTube channel, like on my comments on how to do it, and I'm very thankful for everyone who comes with suggestions. I'm going to use a transistor or something like that to give more power to these. So I just I use the GoTech to control if the inputs, if the LED is on and off, and based on that, I just use the power straight from the power supply to turn them on and off. I'm going to do that eventually.
Can you show us the back ports?
Yeah. And this is the back. Because the computer doesn't have space for a CD-ROM drive, I added this IDE port on the back here so I can connect a CD-ROM drive to the computer. If you watch the video, you see how I did it. There's basically like a little board in there that bridges the inside cable to the outside. I designed that board and got that manufactured.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool. And the SBCs down here, and these are normal like ISA cards, like sound card, video card, Ethernet, and this is the SBC itself. This is a Noctua fan up here. And yeah, originally I wanted to use one of those line CD-ROM drives, those ones that you see in laptops. But I had compatibility issues with the SBC. The SBC wasn't liking those very much while using the SD2 IDE adapter. So I couldn't really use those, which was a bit of a bummer. I wanted to have it to the side here and then press a button, it would open to the side. But that would have made the case bigger anyways, and I don't need the CD-ROM drive all the time. So it wasn't really a bad compromise in the end.
Well, the idea of having like an external peripheral for something like that is kind of the era too. It wasn't too abnormal to have people buy something to hook in that their computer didn't.
Yes, but it would be SCSI, right? If it was an external drive, it would probably have been SCSI. I don't want to say exactly how old I am, but let's just say that I built computers like that when they were new. My friends and I built computers like that when they were a new thing. So and I will never forget when I got my first CD-ROM drive. I never forget that was an IDE, and then at one point I got a CDR, and that was such a big deal, and it was like $500 for the CDR.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was so much money that I convinced my friends to invest in it with me. I was like, I'll burn whatever CD you want if you invest $100 in this CDR drive. So it's that's really impressive. So let's talk software for a second. What does it run?
It can run whatever you want from the era. So right now I have two SD cards, one with DOS 6.22, another one with Windows 3.11, and another one Windows 95. I have one with OS 2 Warp 4 that kind of works. I didn't put that in the video because it doesn't work very well at the moment. I need to troubleshoot some video stuff. It's it works, and then I installed the drivers for the video card to get more resolutions, and then the screen goes blank. But OS 2 is a bit of a nightmare to get running, even though it's a better operating system than Windows when it's running, when everything's installed. To get everything running is a bit hard.
So what? So it doesn't have a hard drive; it just uses the floppies.
Yeah. No. Sorry. The SD2ID adapter, the one that was using there and showing there.
Yeah.
It's exactly that one. So basically, you put the SD card in, and you connect the IDE cable to the other side, and you has two options for power: a normal Molex or the floppy connector. And it works exactly like a normal hard drive, but you have SD cards, so you can swap the SD cards. So what I did is that SD card slot that you see that he showed there, I have an extension that goes from there to this port at the front here. And
nice.
I can swap the SD cards, and I can have multiple SD cards, each one with a different operating system. I do the same for that computer back there. It's not an original idea. A lot of YouTubers have done that.
Yep.
And it's cool because you can have any operating system. You can have old versions of Linux as well. I have in that computer like very old versions of Linux as well.
Oh.
Yeah. And it's a really cool thing, especially because, again, especially hard drives, they're all dying right now. I wouldn't put a real hard drive on a computer anymore, even though I miss the sound of the.
Yeah. So.
You can emulate that somehow.
I feel like you should. I feel like if you're not doing that, you should have like the floppy noise and the hard drive noise like emulated somehow.
The GoTech does emulation of floppy noise, if I remember rightly.
No, it doesn't make the noise. What I'm thinking of doing eventually, stay tuned on my channel because I'll eventually do it, is I want to build something with an Arduino or something like that, that when the LED, it detects when the LED of the floppy disk is on and maybe plays the sound of a floppy disk, the sound of it reading. And I'm thinking of doing something similar for the hard drive eventually, where you plug it to where the hard drive LED comes out and then detects when it's on and then just reproduces the noise. Like I said, I wanted to get as close as possible to the look and feel of an old computer while maintaining having some of the conveniences that we have nowadays, with, like, for example, the SD cards for the hard drive and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, it leads us on quite nicely because one of the other things you've done is the monitor for the computer. It's not just, you're not just got a boring beige, CRT from somewhere. You've made your own. That's 3D printed, and it's an LCD screen inside. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's an LCD that I got from AliExpress. And I have an acrylic front here to protect the screen. Eventually, I want to replace it with actual glass because acrylic scratches a lot easier than glass. But yeah, I put the buttons down here. I put the board from the LCD controller down here so I can control it. And it has 3 inputs, which is actually very convenient because I've used this monitor. It saved me a couple of times because, like, I have a NAS back there with Unraid, and I had some issue turning it on, and I was like, oh, I need a monitor to connect to the computer, and this thing was right there, and I just connected to the VGA. I was like, holy crap, this is so useful, not only for this computer, but I can use it for other things.
And it's light, isn't it? It's very lightweight.
Yeah, it's super light, and I bought a VHS player recently as well, and I have the RCA connector for composite, and I can plug things there. I needed to rip a Dreamcast Dreamcast game from the actual Dreamcast to just plug it in here. It has HDMI as well, so I can plug it to anything really. It's very convenient. But yeah, I made this case that looks like a Samsung SyncMaster 3. That's what I based on because that was a monitor that I used to have when I was a kid. And that's
just a bit bigger, right?
Yeah. there's a lot of empty space in here. A lot of people in the comments were like, "Oh, that's a bit wasteful, isn't it? You could have put the computer in there." I'm like, "Yeah, I could
That
probably
defeats the
have."
purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be big.
Sure, you could, but then it wouldn't be like the real thing, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
it's got to be in proportion. I mean, it's a wonderful 3D print you've done. What printer did you use for that?
This one was a Prusa Mark III S. Yeah. And it's a really good printer. I got it secondhand, and I had to refurbish it a little bit to get things working. But yeah, it worked pretty well in the end. I actually had to go through 4 3D printers to be able to get the computer ready. Yeah. I went through like a Creality Ender 3v2. I went through a FlashForge Adventurer 4. And a Creality Ender 3S1. I had issues with all of them. Yeah, that's what I say. Like when I told you guys before the show, if a 3D printer reviewer on YouTube tells you that this is like a pretty easy to use 3D printer, and you can't set it up with your kids in a weekend and get quality 3D prints, don't believe them. They have a lot of experience dealing with 3D printers. They're a bit biased. It's not that easy, especially for me, because my main goal is not to 3D print. My main goal is to build my projects and use the 3D printer as just a tool for that.
Yeah.
Right.
It was a bit annoying to have to spend so much time having to troubleshoot 3D printers.
It's its own hobby.
Yeah,
it is. It is. The reality is, it's like I say, normal 2D printers are already annoying and they're temperamental. Imagine adding another dimension to it. It's like, it's asking for trouble.
No question. I'm really curious what filament you use to get that old-fashioned color and look.
It does look spiffy.
It's the. Let's see if I have it in hand here. I have a drawer here with filaments.
Oh, I've got a shelf behind me of filaments. Yeah, I feel your pain.
Yeah. It's the Isun PLA Plus. This is the bone white. This is the one that I used to 3D print this. This one works pretty well with the Prusa. I have some other ones that actually look better than this one. Like, for example, this Filamentum one. I used this whole spool just with failed 3D printers. 3D prints, sorry. And this one looks pretty good as well. Devil Design. I think these would replicate more a brand new computer from the era.
Yeah.
Whereas the one that I used, the Isun, it replicates an aged computer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So have you thought about putting a badge on your computer and what you would use for that?
Yes, I have a tab opened here on my browser right now. I was looking into that. I wanted to make one of those domed badges to put, because I made I 3D printed the case with the space to put it here.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I was gonna do it for the video, but the video was taking like 2 years to make the video. At some point, you're gonna be like, I need to finish this. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna leave this for an update video or something like that. But I want to make badges. I think Clint from LGR has his own badges that he puts on his computers, and you can go on the websites and order those. But you can also, I think you can also make them at home. There are ways to make them at home with like resin or something like that. So I'm looking on ways to make I want to do it to look like those 90s small store computer stores.
So interestingly, we had, and I think we got rid of them all because I couldn't imagine where we would use them again, a roll of Tom's Hardware badges like that. That had a hammer on, just the hammer, had the hammer on it, on like a white hammer on a red background. We had them somewhere. And it was one of those things that got me, because I remember when I was, first building computers, every case had that badge on it.
Yep.
For those of you who don't remember why, it's because small companies would build their own PC, would make their own PCs with these cases, and their only way of kind of branding it was that they would make the square like sticker, which some of them were really nice and elaborate. They had metal on them, whatever. They weren't cheap, right? And they would put their little sticker on it, and so it would be that's how you knew it was from X company. But then when those of us who'd build a PC for ourselves would get it, we wouldn't have the sticker we wouldn't have a sticker, so it would look a little bit awkward, like where's the badge. So it's interesting because that's something that has obviously faded away, and in the time there's no badge spot on current day cases anymore.
I really respect this conversation because I use the ThinkPad here, but I run Manjaro on it, and we went out of our way to order Manjaro badges that are holographic and stuck it right under the keyboard because it just looks right. Because you're running Manjaro, you see the logo on the screen, you see it on the computer. It's like, this is my Manjaro ThinkPad. It gives it identity. Oh, you got a new Ubuntu one. That's beautiful.
I love those ones. The Intel Pentium ones, they're made of aluminum. Those ones, they're like, they have a bit of a you can feel the logo as well. It has a bit of a, how do you call it, like, the word escaped me right now, but
bas relief or whatever you call it, where it's like it's sticking up.
You can feel the logo when you pass, and it's all aluminum. It looks beautiful.
Those are nice. Those sorts of things were really nice with the logo.
I have to add this in here too, because I like to mod Game Boys. We were talking about the colors earlier of your filament. It made me think about these, but these are aftermarket shells. This one on the back is pretty plain. This one has a fake serial number and the original Nintendo number that you're supposed to call. Yeah. You can go the extra mile sometimes with little details, and this looks more legit than this just by the stickers alone, and I just appreciate that level of attention.
That's great. So what's your next project? Are you going to go further back in time to like an older PC?
I have a list of projects that is gigantic, like a custom Game Boy, like those ones is in my list as well. Because growing up, I didn't have a Game Boy, and all my friends had Game Boys, so now I have a bunch of them. I'm like, haha, so who has more Game Boys now?
Be sure to backlight it. Don't forget to backlight it.
Yeah, I'm definitely doing that, especially with the Advance. It looks so beautiful. I'm more of a Game Boy Color guy, but I love the form factor of the original Game Boy Advance, so I'm definitely modding that one.
Oh, I've seen people put LCD screens in a Game Boy Advance.
It looks beautiful. It looks.
You don't have to sit under a lamp or anything.
Yeah, I want to do that to the Game Gear as well, because the LCD from the Game Gear is horrible.
Oh, it's awful.
Yeah, and my next video is going to be just an update on my website, Alta Vista. I'm adding a feature called Directories, which I don't know if any of you are familiar with Alta Vista. It's a search website to search for old personal websites that don't exist anymore.
Like a Wayback Machine?
Exactly, a scraped Wayback Machine for websites that used to be hosted on GeoCities, Zoom, Angelfire.
Oh, I was hoping you say Angelfire.
Tripod.
Yeah.
Tripod, and all of those old personal website host services, AOL Hometown, another one. And I
miss the old internet.
Yeah, I missed it. Yeah. If you go to my website, you can see where I got the inspiration from for the design of the website. So this website is based on the Alta Vista design from 1998-ish. Mm-hmm. And I basically scraped all of those websites, and I built a search engine around it. So you can look for, like, let's say, cake recipe, and then you're going to find websites that used to be hosted on those services.
Neat.
And it's www.altavista.com. This is how you spell it.
Nice.
You were always without the apostrophe here, but so the next update is I scraped the Yahoo directories from 1996 to 2003, and I checked which of the URLs from the directories were still working on, were still available on the Wayback Machine. And then you can navigate through you will be able to navigate through the directory. So I'm going to release that in a few weeks because I've been busy lately doing other stuff. So I didn't have much time to put on that. Like, actually, this directories feature, I've also been working on that for 2 years now as well.
That's
you
so
can
cool.
notice you can notice a theme here. It takes forever for me to finish projects, especially because I go on tangents all the time. It's like, oh, this thing is cool, but like, what if I try that other thing? Oh, there's this other project that I could try. Yeah, so I'm gonna release that, and I'm gonna make a little video about that, and then after that, I'm probably gonna do something more related to retro gaming because I've been doing a lot of retro computing stuff. Yeah, but I have a huge list of things that I want to do, and I'm probably not going to be able to finish.
In your video for the tiny PC that you've put together, you demonstrated quite a few games on some older operating systems, and I wanted to ask earlier, and this is a good segue, what was the performance like on that? Because you mentioned also at the beginning of our conversation that you wanted to boot directly into the operating system. You don't just want to emulate it. And one of the big problems you have with emulators is trying to get the speed right on some of these programs. So does it feel good? Does it hit good? What's the performance like for gaming?
So it is a 486, so it's going to perform like a 486 would perform on those things. So for DOS games, it works amazing in general. If you want to play DOS era games, it's beautiful. With Windows 3.1, it's a bit slower, but you can play some games. But I'm not all about games. I like doing computing in general. So browsing the old internet, like I demonstrated a little bit on the video as well. It works pretty well with Netscape and old Internet Explorer. And I like playing music and stuff like that. For that, it doesn't work really well. Like, I don't know if it's the bit rate that is too high, but MP3s they play kind of choppy. MIDI files play well because of the sound card.
I bet they do.
And Windows 95 is a bit rougher because it's a bit more modern. The video card is not very powerful because ISA video cards are not made for intensive Windows graphics, right? So for that, it's better to use PCI cards in general. But the SBC doesn't have any PCI slots, and if it had, it would be limited to the bus to the ISA bus speed.
Right.
Anyways,
very true.
That makes sense. So speaking of PC emulation, Les, you've been working on a project for that as well, right?
I have indeed, yes. I just put it in the comments for the show, actually. So recently I was messing around with something called PCEM.
Oh, it's amazing. It's so good.
It's brilliant. Basically, it's vintage PC emulation. So you can go all the way from an AC88 to a Socket 7 Pentium era. If you've got the BIOS for it, you can emulate it. And it's right down to audio, video, so you can get Sound Blaster 16 or 32, whatever you want. It even does a Voodoo 3 graphics card. So I went through my gaming history. So I started off with a 486 computer, DX33, 4 meg of RAM, and an aftermarket CD-ROM I installed myself and then broke the machine. I had to spend £200 to fix it. This is 1990s price as well, so I was wiping out my pocket money for a long time. And then I went all the way to the era of, what machine was it? It was D8, it was AMD 333 I had, a Pentium era machine. And it was so easy to build a PCM. Just say, I want this machine, I've got the BIOS, I want this much RAM, this sound card, this graphics card, here's a hard drive image, and you create a virtual hard drive. And then from there, all you need to do is say, okay, install software. So I installed, for the 486, it was DOS 622 and then Windows 3.1. And then, of course, I played Doom on it because that's what you have to do. It's the law.
Yeah.
And then for the later era, I installed Windows 98 Second Edition, which I believe was the first one to have USB support. Yeah. Even though I never used it in the emulation, I just wanted that one. That's what I had.
Yeah.
Then I installed Star Trek Voyager Elite Force, and I've got the CD from the era still. In fact, I've got it 3 times because whenever I see it at a yard sale or a car boot, as we say in the UK, I always pick it up. It's like 50p, like $1. You just got to pick it up. It's the law. And I thoroughly tested that game for at least 30 to 40 minutes in the board cube at the start to make sure it worked. And it worked pretty well. You had to limit the refresh rate down to, sorry, not refresh rate, the resolution down to 640 by 480.
Yeah.
To get a stable-ish 50, 60 hertz, 50 frames. It was okay. Yeah. It was completely playable. But I've got a guide. I've just put a link in the comments. Everyone can go there and have a look at that. Yeah. You can do it yourself. It's really easy. And the software is all free to do it. It's great fun.
I use it. Yes. I use PCM to run Windows 98 to actually I was building a Windows 3.1 client for the Alta Vista chat because I have an HTML chat on Alta Vista and I wanted to build a client for Windows 3.1. So I installed PCM on my desktop to run Delphi 1 to be able to build that. It's a project that I'm slowly working on as well. It works perfectly. And yeah, that's one of the options that I looked into for building a tiny computer as well, because you can build PCM for the Raspberry Pi. Mm-hmm. It's not that simple, but you can do it. The problem is the whole turning on the computer and booting straight into the operating system and then shutting it down and turning the computer off and stuff like that. But yeah, the emulator is so good that if one day we can get to that point, it's going to be incredible.
Yeah. Something like this. This is a Latte Panda 3 Delta SBC.
Yeah.
That should be able to do it because you've got an Arduino built into that. So you can have your case buttons. Yeah. An Arduino Leonardo's, that one there. And you've got also breakouts on this side for standard PC connections like RS-232 and that sort of thing. So
I'm going to look into that.
Great.
You could use one of those, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic. So, Ash, you had something that you wanted to talk about real quick before we wind down. What were some of the projects on your list for this week?
So I wanted to share things that are not Raspberry Pi projects because our guest brought us not a Raspberry Pi project, but it could be a Pi project. And I thought it would be neat to talk about how these projects could be used with a Raspberry Pi if you wanted to. Maybe we could talk about which board you would choose for this particular project. So first, I wanted to show this really cool Arduino instrument. You actually blow into it to make sound. I think it uses an Arduino Nano. Nope, it's not it's an Arduino Micro. And it's got all these buttons on it and a little OLED display. And I don't know, I think you could probably pull that off with a Pico or some kind of RP2040 board. What do you guys think?
Yeah, definitely.
No
Absolutely.
question.
And it sounds really cool too. So check out this article on Tom's Hardware and play the video. I think I put the video. Yeah, play the video and listen to what it sounds like. Because I've seen digital instruments before where you press a button and it makes a sound, but this is one of the first ones I've ever seen where you actually have to blow into it to make the sound come out. And there's different ways that your breath can affect it. That's what the settings are for underneath the screen. You'll see the up-down arrows under that. It's so that you can adjust it for stuff like how hard you blow makes it louder, or it could change the pitch. So you could effectively change the whole instrument and the way it performs with just a few settings. And I thought that was just super cool.
That's
I had
cool.
to show that one.
That's incredible. Reminds me a bit of the DS with that thing that the ability that you had to blow into the console to do some things in the games.
Yes.
Yeah, Legend of Zelda had that as one of the game mechanics. Yeah.
It was in WarioWare too, I think.
Yeah.
My mic didn't work, so I couldn't do those games. I always lost those ones.
Oh, yeah.
The next one I wanted to share was this Arduino-powered robotic serving tray. And the idea is that it has these 3D printed arms, and as you hold it on the bottom, they will adjust automatically with, I think it's just an accelerometer on the plate to keep it as level as possible. It's not as fast at making corrections as I think the maker wanted it to be, but it is fast enough to demonstrate on video that it will make adjustments. Whether or not it'll not spill your beer depends on how crazy you're being with it, I think. But let's see, what did they use? Yeah, they used a Nano in this one. I don't think it would take too much Pi-wise. You could probably get away with a Pico, but if you wanted to add maybe something extra to it. I mean, a 0 would be a big step up from that, but
oh yeah, I mean the Arduino Nano I think is 16 megahertz and maybe 32 kilobytes of SRAM. So the a $4 Raspberry Pi Pico would walk away with that project.
Yeah, it just has to read the input from the accelerometer and then probably use a driver board for the servos because it takes a few to operate those legs.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And also the power for the servos as well. The Arduino couldn't supply it all. So you have to have something external for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool because you could probably build a camera gimbal with that as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea too.
Idea. Yeah.
They're over here just thinking about beer.
Yeah.
And the last one I wanted to share was, and we've seen projects similar to these before. I just think it's really cool. It's a robotic arm, and you control it by muscle movement. So you wear this sensor module on your arm that can detect EMG signals. So if you flex certain muscles, it'll pick up that muscle's been flexed, and then it triggers a servo to twist, and it pulls a little tendon on the arm that will make the corresponding fingers curl in or curl out. And I think it's just an Arduino that's receiving the signal. The sensor that you wear transmits wirelessly. So as long as you've got maybe like a Pico W or a 0W, something small like that, then you could pick up the signal and tell the servos what to do.
That's incredible.
That's very cool. It just shows what you can do now with off-the-shelf
hardware.
Yeah,
it is amazing. We gotta wind down, but I wanted to say this weekend I took my kids to Maker Faire around here, and they had a project which I'm trying to figure out how I could incorporate this, where they were using what do you call it? Sort of reading like body energy with electrodes and using that to make sound. And I'm trying to figure out how maybe you could use that to control something. So that would be that ARM project reminds me of that a little bit. Anyway, I want to thank Eric so much for joining us, and everybody for watching and listening. Please check out Eric's work at either his YouTube channel, The Eric Experiment, or the ericexperiment.com or ericexperiment.com, which has a lot of fantastic stuff on it. I can't wait to go and play with Olda Vista. See which websites of mine come up, and
share them next week, right?
No joke. And we will see you all next week at same time, 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. UK time. Everybody have a great week. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for having me.